So today's class is on the 6 Paramitas. This is the follow-up to the last class, which was also on the 6 Paramitas. So in the last class, we talked about the first 3 Paramitas, and this one we'll do the second set of 3. But first, we're going to just review a little bit of what we talked about in the last class to get anyone that wasn't here caught up and provide some continuity. So I have some handouts and chain. So let's see if you could just take one and pass them on. We might need to share some. I'm not sure how many copies I have. So the first, most important part of this is what's in the middle of that paper, bodhicitta. So bodhicitta is the center of all of our activities. Does anyone remember what bodhicitta is? I know you know.
The mind of enlightenment.
Yes, thanks. Bodhicitta is the mind of enlightenment. And I want to reread this quote from Jetsama that I read in the last class because it is just such an excellent definition of bodhicitta. She said, "The practice of bodhicitta is taking the vow of compassion, committing oneself to live one's life as a compassionate person, and moving into adopting the posture of and becoming a bodhisattva. That is, an awakening being who lives to benefit others." So in everything that we do, we are trying to have the bodhicitta as the heart of our actions. We're taking the vow of compassion, committing ourselves to compassionate actions and livelihoods, and then becoming a bodhisattva, becoming an awakening being who can really be of true benefit to others. So bodhicitta is of the same nature as truth, and there's 2 aspects to truth. The Buddha taught that there is relative truth and absolute truth. And so there's relative bodhicitta and absolute bodhicitta. Hi. So the absolute bodhicitta is the non-dual, inconceivable expanse of primordial wisdom. It's the ultimate nature of all phenomena, and it's always radiating love and compassion out freely for the benefit of all sentient beings. And that compassion appears in the world as relative bodhicitta, and that is the compassion that we're able to experience in a visceral way in our relative reality. So the relative bodhicitta can be described in, there's 2 types of relative bodhicitta. There's the aspirational bodhicitta and the actualizing bodhicitta. So with aspirational bodhicitta, we are developing the intention to awaken the Buddha qualities of all sentient beings. We're developing a pure motivation and pure intention to be of benefit to others. And then the second step is to actually apply oneself to accomplishing the benefit of others. So first we establish our intention, and then we work to accomplish that intention. And that's the aspirational and the actualizing aspects of bodhicitta. So the aspirational bodhicitta, you can see on your little diagram, which, sorry, I don't have enough. So the bodhicitta is based upon the 4 immeasurables. And this is the aspirational bodhicitta. It's based on immeasurable love, immeasurable compassion, immeasurable joy, and immeasurable equanimity. So we can begin developing that aspiration by saying prayers like, "May all beings be happy. May all beings be free of suffering. May all beings experience joy. and remain in a state of equanimity. So we can cultivate that aspiration that may all beings be happy and free of suffering, and we can cultivate that pure aspiration through the practice of the four immeasurables. And then we have to actually work on accomplishing that aspiration. We have to actually try to help others, and we do that through the actualizing bodhicitta, which is the 6 perfections, and that's what we're talking about today. So the bodhicitta, the true nature of mind, is like a crystal that reflects light out in 6 different ways. And so you can see that on the diagram. The bodhicitta radiates out as generosity, patience, discipline, I got this wrong word. Generosity, discipline, patience, diligence, concentration, and wisdom. Those are the ways that the bodhicitta radiates out and appears in the world. And this is how we can incorporate bodhicitta activities into our everyday life, is through the practice of these 6 paramitas. So last class we talked about generosity and discipline and patience. And this class we're going to be focusing on the next 3. So the 4th paramita is diligence. So when bodhicitta radiates as great joy in action, you become increasingly aware of the ways that you can benefit others. And this is the 4th perfection of diligence, and it's also called joyful effort. So joyful effort is actually the support for all of the other 6 perfections. It sustains our practice of them. We're joyfully putting in the effort of practicing all of the 6 perfections. And without joyful effort, then our practice of the other ones becomes sloppy and unstable because we're not really trying. We're not really putting effort into it. So Khenpo Palden Sherab said, "The nature of transcendental effort is a courageous commitment to be energetically engaged with great happiness. There's no sense of burden or difficulty, and nobody is forcing you to do these things, but you are deeply motivated by understanding the tremendous value and importance of bodhicitta activities so that you are always eager to perform and perfect them." So diligence is great joy in action. That's what we're doing, is we're cultivating joy through our actions, benefiting others. So through the practice of diligence, we develop our inner qualities as well as the means to benefit others. So let's say you have a lot of compassion and a very strong intention to help sick people. You really want to help sick people feel better. So that aspiration is great, and maybe you can bring someone some cold medicine, or you can help people in some small ways. But if you really want to be of benefit and help sick people, you'd have to go to medical school, and you'd have to work really hard and study, and go to medical school for like 8 years, and then do internships, and you'd have to really, really apply yourself to that study of medicine and putting it into practice, and that's how you would be of great benefit to others. So we practice diligence in order to achieve our goal. And this is true with worldly and spiritual things. We have to practice diligence to achieve any of our goals. On the Buddhist path, our goal is the temporary and ultimate happiness of all beings. And so to accomplish that goal, we have to practice the Dharma with real happiness, courage, and commitment. So joyful effort can be divided into 3 stages. So the first stage overcomes discouragement and self-defeating attitudes. So you might think, I can't do this. Maybe the Buddha could do this, but there is no way that I can do this. Like, I'm not enlightened, never going to be. This is not going to work for me. This is just putting yourself down and making excuses. It's not based in truth. Everyone has these capabilities, and anyone that does the work will achieve the same results. Khenpo Palden Sherab said, "We have to awaken our sense of dignity, the truth of our glorious potential, and then work to carry on with that attitude. We don't have to feel weak, low, and unacceptable because we have the Buddha nature. We have compassion, we have wisdom, and we have awareness. The only difference between us and the Buddha is our lack of joyful effort. Otherwise, our potential is the same. So that's really encouraging. The only difference between us and the Buddha is a lack of joyful effort. So we just have to apply ourselves. Like they say in AA, it works if you work it. So you just do your best and try. The second type of joyful effort overcomes old habit patterns. So we all have tendencies that are not so helpful to ourselves or to others. And even though we may understand the value of loving kindness and compassion, we have these old habits that are not based in compassion. And those can make it really difficult for us to truly accomplish the bodhicitta because we're caught up in our old habit patterns. So you might say just like, oh, that's just how I am, and not make any effort to change those habits. But that's not going to get you anywhere. Some people celebrate their bad habits. Like have you seen those throw pillows that say, if you don't have anything nice to say, sit next to me? So it's funny, but it's perpetuating a bad habit of gossip, so it's not great ultimately. So it's important to look at the attitudes that we have around our bad habits and not be encouraging them, but instead be courageous in transforming our unhelpful habits. So whenever we spot an unhelpful habit in ourselves, don't get down on yourself, be like, oh, this is why I'll never become enlightened. You know, that doesn't work. But you just have to apply joyful effort to transform that pattern of behavior. So the third type of joyful effort overcomes negligence or laziness. And laziness can be harder to spot, and it can be subtle in its negative influence. So laziness might not seem as harmful as like anger or pride or greed. Laziness seems kind of benign a lot of the time, but it's not helping us. It's not helping anyone else. So sleep is a really good example of the subtlety of laziness. So we all need sleep. I love to sleep. I don't know if anyone else does. I love to sleep. And you know, we need to sleep. We probably need like 6 to 8 hours of sleep a night to be healthy, right? But we don't need 12 hours of sleep. We don't need to be sleeping all the time. So the teachers caution us that we shouldn't spend too much time sleeping. And Khenpo Palden Sherab says it can be an attachment to a state of tranquility which blinds you to more important things. And I can think of a number of tranquil states that I'm attached to that blind me to more important things, like binge watching Netflix and reading novels. And there's all of these things that we do in our life that aren't necessarily bad. We're not hurting anyone when we're watching Netflix, but we're not helping them either. So it's just important to pay attention to the way that you're using your time. Because what's the most important thing? Bodhichitta? Yes, bodhicitta. So if you're sleeping all the time, you'll waste your opportunities to practice bodhicitta. If you're watching Netflix and reading books and curled up all cozy on your couch and sleeping through the winter, you know, you're not of much benefit to others. So even though it's really cozy and yeah. So we have to actually get out of bed to help others, and we have to move past our lazy tendencies. And so if you are aware that you're being lazy, just make a joyful effort to reorient yourself. Remember your motivation. Remember what's most important is bodhicitta, and remember that, you know, these bodhicitta activities are the only way to true happiness. And so when you really understand that, when you really understand the purpose of what you're doing on the path, what you're doing when you're helping others, what you're doing when you're developing these 6 perfections in yourself, then that creates the motivation to apply yourself to them. So you're not forcing yourself to do something by rote, but you're really understanding why it's so important to benefit others, that this is the way to become happy, this is the way to help others be happy, and then that naturally makes you want to work for the benefit of others. So joyful effort is a combination of great happiness, sustained interest, and courageous commitment. Great happiness, sustained interest, and courageous commitment. And that is very important for our spiritual growth, because without those things, we would just be couch potatoes. We wouldn't do anything. So then the fifth paramita is Transcendental Concentration. And this is when the bodhicitta radiates as stability of mind. So again, the bodhicitta is radiating out in all of these ways that we can experience within our internal or external experience. So this is when the bodhicitta radiates as stability of mind. And we develop that meditative stability or concentration by training the mind. The development of love, compassion, and wisdom naturally brings peace and clarity to the mind. And maintaining the mind in this state is known as shamatha in Sanskrit. So you might have heard of shamatha meditation. The opposite of this concentration is confusion and emotional instability. Ring a bell for anyone? So if we develop the bodhicitta attitude, the intention to benefit all sentient beings, the one-pointedness of that compassionate intention naturally calms and settles our mind. Love and compassion keep the mind from becoming agitated, distracted, and restless. So everything that you see, perceive, conceive, or experience as a modification of reality displayed by your own mind. So it's incredibly important that we tame our own minds, because it is the basis of everything that we experience. Mind analyzes, decides, judges. Happiness, sadness, good feelings, bad feelings, all of these things are manifesting through our minds and interpreted by our minds. There's not a single activity that we take part in that is not directed by our mind. If you want to walk across the room, that's your mind telling your body to walk across the room. If you're happy or sad, you've got positive thoughts and negative thoughts and different habit patterns that are in your mind. And your mind's always, always working. Even at night, we're dreaming. So our mind is constantly, constantly working and creating our reality. The mind actually has no choice but to move. The phenomenal or surface nature of the mind is dynamic. It's like wind. It has to move. It naturally moves. And we can track the direction of that movement, whether it's going in a positive or negative direction, by watching our habits. And if we honestly observe our minds, we can usually see traces of negative emotions. We see attachment or anger, jealousy, pride, doubt, even just subtle things. Just like, oh, I wish that hadn't happened. Oh, that person cut me off in traffic. We usually have some kind of negative emotion playing in our mind. And when those negative emotions are engaged, we can't really say that we're progressing towards the realization of love, wisdom, compassion, and equanimity. In that moment when we're engaging with a negative habit pattern and negative emotion, we're not actively moving towards love, compassion, joy, and equanimity. So once in a while, that emotional roller coaster is interrupted, and we have a moment of temporary bliss or like liberation from that. But then we fall back into old habit patterns. We haven't established any stability of mind. So we might have like one little moment of freedom, and then boom, back to thinking about our work week, and just stuck in our habits. So negative emotions obscure and upset the mind. They cause all sorts of issues. They cause headaches and fatigue. They make us restless. They make us dull. They create chaotic situations in our life because we can't control our emotions, or we're at the whim of our habits and emotions, and so we wind up in ridiculous life situations. And but we don't realize that we're creating this all for ourselves. So the mind lacks insight into its creative activities. It's very creative. But we think, oh, this is external. He made me angry. She made me upset. You know, all this stuff's happening to me. That car hit me on the road. You know, this is all happening to me for no reason. But our obscurations, you know, it's like if someone says something to you, it's your choice to get angry or not. That's on you. So our obscurations are our own creations. And because we created it, we're the only ones that can fix it. The mind is, you know, our mind created it, so our mind has to be the one that releases and dissolves those negative emotions and negative habits. So in order to do that, we have to practice transcendent concentration to get that stability of mind. So each of the 6 paramitas goes a little deeper than the last one. So generosity is the easiest and most obvious practice of them. We're very well acquainted with the idea of generosity and giving to others. And then patience that's a little bit more internal, has to do with like our internal experience of dealing with others. And then, you know, discipline is also internal, and diligence is going even a little deeper than the first, than those, and then concentration goes even deeper. So, but all of the 6 perfections work together, and so it's really important to establish those first 4 perfections in order to truly engage with a meditation practice. So it's important to have those qualities of generosity, discipline, patience, and diligence when you're engaging with meditation. So the practice of transcendental concentration begins with focusing your attention. You develop the ability to hold the mind in a state of one-pointed concentration. And there's 3 types of concentration, because we've got lists for everything in Buddhism. So we've got a list. So the first type of concentration is childlike concentration. There's childlike concentration, calm and clear meditation, and the concentration which pleases all of the Buddhas. So childlike concentration is the beginner's level. It's not very strong yet. We're just starting to learn how to focus our attention. And there's many different techniques for meditation, but they fall into 2 basic categories: concentration with an object and concentration without an object. So with object concentration, you use something like a small crystal or a flower or even your own breath to focus on for the object of your meditation. Meditation on the breath is actually one of the disciplines most highly recommended by the Buddha. It's always with us, so it's a perfect object for meditation. Anytime you can meditate on your breath. Even if you're just in a waiting room or you're driving, you've always got your breath there with you as something that you can focus on to meditate. So whatever your object of meditation is, whether it's your breath or a flower or crystal, you just allow your mind to rest gently on it, like a feather. And if you're focusing on your breath, you don't breathe differently. You don't force yourself to breathe in any particular way. You just relax, and you observe your breath as it flows in and out of your nostrils. And then when you notice your mind running off, as minds do, then you just bring it back, non-judgmentally. You just call your attention back to your object of meditation. And there's also concentration without an object, and this is strictly mental, but it's the same general practice. So concentration without an object, an example of that would be visualizing a small circle of bright white light immediately in front of yourself. And then you just rest your attention there. Gently, still that feather light touch on that object, and then when your mind runs off, you just gently bring it back. So you don't follow or analyze where your mind's going, oh, I started thinking about this stressful thing. This means I'm really stressed. I need to go, you don't need to chase it and find out, oh, I'm thinking these angry thoughts. This means I really need to work on my anger. You will work on your anger, but in the moment, you just need to focus on your concentration. So wherever your mind goes, whether it's to a positive thought or a negative thought, you think you left the stove on, whatever it is, you just bring it back to that object of concentration without judging yourself or chasing after those thoughts. And sometimes our minds will be really wild, and it'll feel like there's no way you can meditate because your mind's just too wild. But you just try anyways. Doubting your ability to practice meditation only makes the practice of meditation harder. So that's just another obstacle that your ego will throw out at you. So those thoughts of doubt, you also just let them go and come back to your object of meditation. And it's important to understand that movement is the nature of mind. So when you're asked, this is just the nature of it. It's going to move. So we have to accept that. There's no need to judge yourself like, oh, I'm the only one whose mind moves. No, everyone's mind moves. Constantly. So don't judge yourself. Just bring it back to the object of concentration, and you try to hold it there for like a second at first, and then 2 seconds, and then maybe a minute, 2 minutes, and slowly, you will be able to stabilize your concentration, and you'll be able to meditate for longer and longer periods of time. So that's childlike concentration. The second type of concentration is known as calm, clear, and bright. So this is developed on the basis of childlike concentration. And once you work up to meditating for like 5 or 6 minutes at a time, even that little, just 5 or 6 minutes at a time, you will inevitably experience some sort of peace or clarity. Even if it's just momentary, you might have a moment of just peace and clarity. And we don't have this in our daily life because our minds are constantly running and grasping onto everything in our life and, never allowing us any time or space to experience our true nature. But when you start to calm down the activities of the mind through the practice of concentration, your hidden qualities will naturally shine forth, calm, clear, and bright. So as you stabilize your mind, your natural inner qualities will start to shine out. The third type of concentration is the concentration which pleases all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. And this is an advanced form that builds on the first 2 forms of concentration. So once your meditation practice has evolved to the point where your thoughts are no longer controlling your mind at all, and primordial wisdom arises naturally, and you can abide in the original state, then your mind is calm and clear like a lake. And this is the third type of concentration. So if we think of childlike concentration like water in a stream moving quickly down a mountain, that's childlike concentration. And then that stream opens up into a wide river. And it's calmer and slower. The mind is still moving, but it's calmer and slower. That's the second type of meditation, of meditative concentration. And then that water pools into the ocean or a lake. And if you look at the surface, it looks like it's not moving. But if you look closely enough, you'll see there's still a little bit of movement underneath. But the depths are very calm and peaceful. And that's the third type of concentration. So meditation practice at that third stage has been referred to as taming the wild elephant. So if you tame a wild elephant, you can have him do anything. If you tell the elephant to sit, he sits. If you tell the elephant to stand, he stands. So when your mind is like that, and your mind is following your commands instead of you just at the whim of whatever emotion is coming up that minute, that kind of concentration where you've tamed the elephant of your mind, that is the concentration which pleases all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. So those are the 3 types of concentration. The last paramita is the paramita of wisdom. So when bodhicitta radiates beyond conceptions, beyond conceptual states, then it is known as transcendental knowledge or wisdom. The wisdom means the knowledge of absolute truth, beyond ordinary concepts, beyond object-subject duality, beyond temporary experiences of bliss or clarity, temporary experiences of meditative stability. Beyond that is the wisdom of absolute truth. So the first 5 of the 6 perfections are subject-object oriented. So for instance, with generosity, you have the subject, yourself, who's giving to the object, the person to whom something is given, and then you have the act of giving between you. So you've got the subject, the object, and the act of giving. So the subject, object, and action are called the 3 spheres. And we believe in the solidity of these 3 spheres. We go about in our daily life believing that there's me and there's you, and our actions between us are real and solid. But this is the domain of relative truth. It's not the absolute truth. It's not the end of the story. So reality has these 2 aspects. It has ultimate reality, or absolute truth, which are things as they truly are, in and of themselves. And then there's relative reality, or relative truth, which is things as they appear to be on a conventional level. And this is the way that we experience the world. So relative truth can be divided 3 ways. So always have a list. There's the things we see, the things we experience, and the things we hear. These are all relative truth. And then these things, the things we see and experience and hear, our mind observes them, it analyzes them, it makes decisions about them, it makes decisions through the formation of concepts. We develop concepts around everything. Relative truth consists also of those conceptual thoughts and those discriminations, our choices between things, what we think of the world around us. The relative truth also includes all of the objects of our mind, our perception, anything we think or imagine. Fire is hot, wind is moving, water is liquid, space is spacious, happiness is happy, sadness is sad. All of these ideas, these are concepts about the way things are. And all of these are the domain of relative truth. So the universe as we know it is relative truth. In this universe that we know and experience, it feels substantial and graspable. It feels real. But the Buddha taught that actually what we experience is more like a dreamlike display, like a rainbow. Nothing in these appearances is permanent. Nothing is singular. Like, for instance, a hill. A hill is composed of dirt and rocks, and those dirt and rocks are made up of atoms and molecules. And, you know, which pebble is the hill? There's a million pebbles that are composing this concept that we call a hill. And nothing is free either, so everything can be affected by something else. If a landslide happens on that mountain, it's going to affect the shape of the mountain. You know, these pebbles here are going to affect the placement of these pebbles here. Everything affects something else. Nothing is permanent, singular, or free. But we call these phenomenal appearances truth, even though they're just a dreamlike display. We call it truth because in the context of our dreamlike experience, it feels like truth. So, for instance, fire. Fire is not permanent, it's not singular, doesn't exist by itself, and it's not free. So it can be affected by other things. But that doesn't mean it's not going to burn you. If you put your hand in a flame, it's going to burn you. So we still have this experience. But this is still just like a dream, because in a dream, things appear to happen, and they feel real, and then you wake up and you see that nothing has actually occurred. And this is the Buddha taught that this is the true nature of all samsara and all of our relative reality. So Shantideva, the great scholar Shantideva, said that the ultimate truth is not the province of ordinary mind. He explained that ordinary mind concerns itself with conventional reality, whereas ultimate reality is free of and beyond all of these conceptual elaborations of our mind. So you can't say that things exist, nor can you say that things do not exist, that they are or are not. So ultimate reality is beyond the conceptualization of existing or not existing. One of my favorite quotes from the Buddha, he said, "Things are not what they seem. nor are they otherwise. So as we hear teachings and we contemplate and meditate, our intellectual understanding of this gradually becomes a deeper knowing and a direct experience, a stable realization of our ultimate nature. So the Buddha taught that the fundamental nature of things is changeless, but on the relative level, it manifests as a changing, ephemeral display, just like a dream. And just like in a dream, the phenomena does not ultimately exist, but they manifest. We see them, but they don't ultimately exist. And because of this, we say that phenomena are empty. Empty is a word that you're going to hear a lot. Chagda Tulku Rinpoche says, "The empty nature of our experience, the birthless, deathless nature in which nothing has ever come or gone, the nature beyond the extremes of existence and non-existence, is inseparable from the unceasing display of manifest appearances. The actual nature of our relative experience is the absolute truth. We call the knowledge of the inseparability of absolute and relative truth view." So the ultimate truth and the relative truth, they're inseparable, like fire and its warmth. The absolute truth, you could say the fire of absolute truth manifests in the warmth of the relative truth, but they're inseparable. And maintaining that knowledge of that inseparability is called view. And when we apply this view, this wisdom view, to the practice of the first 5 perfections, then we go beyond their ordinary meaning, and that's when they become transcendent. So if in a dream you give an apple to a beggar, and then you wake up and you realize that in truth there was no apple and there was no beggar. So when our generosity is imbued with that wisdom, that truly this is a dream, there's no me, there's no beggar, there's no apple, but then it becomes the perfection of generosity. So the essence of the practice of the 6 perfections and the essence of the Bodhisattva path is maintaining that view and knowing that as we act to benefit another, that action is empty of inherent existence, and yet acting anyway. So even though we don't exist, the subject doesn't exist, the object doesn't exist inherently, and the act itself is also inherently empty, they also don't not exist. It's both. And so we act anyway, but we're constantly aware that everything is empty of inherent existence. So the act of benefiting others is called the accumulation of merit, and this is the effortful gathering of virtue. And Chagda Tulku Rinpoche explains, "We harness the mind's duality using skillful methods, such as the first 5 of the 6 perfections, and a conceptual framework to create benefit within the relative dream experience." The effortless practice of awareness within a non-conceptual framework we call the accumulation of wisdom. So we practice the first 5 of the 6 perfections, give us the conceptual framework to skillfully work with our mind's habit of duality. And then we also have the accumulation of wisdom simultaneously, which is in a non-conceptual framework. And the awareness that we're maintaining is the non-conceptual recognition of the true nature of the emptiness of the 3 spheres of subject, object, and action. So we don't fall to the extreme of believing that everything exists as it appears and just believing our own eyes. We don't fall to that extreme. And we don't go to the other extreme of denying that anything is happening. So things are not what they seem, nor are they otherwise. And because the ground of our experience consists of both of these truths, the relative and absolute truth, inseparable, we have to accumulate both of these accumulations. Both are essential for attaining enlightenment. Chagdatuku Rinpoche explains, in Vajrayana Buddhism, the path is the union or inseparability of the two accumulations of merit and wisdom. We practice maintaining this view in the midst of our daily lives, acting skillfully on a conventional level without ever losing awareness of the essential nature of our activity. This awareness is the ultimate aspect of bodhicitta, while the compassionate aspiration to benefit beings is the relative aspect. So we maintain both. So the ground of our experience is the union of these two truths, a relative and absolute truth, things as they appear and things as they truly are. So our path is the union of both of those accumulations. And that path leads to the fruit, which is the union of what's called the two kayas. That's the form and formless aspects of enlightened being. So that's a lot to consider. So, but trying to maintain that view in our daily lives, while we practice the first of the 5 perfections in our daily lives, that is the path that we're trying to practice. So when we talk about wisdom, it gets kind of out there, and it can be difficult to, I don't know, it's kind of mind-blowing. So I wanted to also give you an example of what the 6 paramitas might look like in a situation that you will likely find yourself in, listening to a teaching. So I think I have my own copy of this. I do. So here, maybe you could just pass those around. You probably have to share again. So I found this in Patrul Rinpoche's book, Words My Perfect Teacher, which is an excellent book if you're starting the Buddhist path. The Words My Perfect Teacher is an excellent guide. So in the Tantra of thorough comprehension of the instructions on all Dharma practices, it says, make excellent offerings, such as flowers and cushions. Put the place in order and control your behavior. Do not harm any living being. Have genuine faith in your teacher. Listen to his instructions without distraction and question him in order to dispel your doubts. These are the 6 transcendent perfections of a listener. And then Patrul Rinpoche comments on this. A person listening to the teaching should practice the 6 transcendent perfections in this way. So the first perfection. What's the first perfection? Generosity. So we practice generosity by preparing the teacher's seat, arranging cushions on it. We offer the mandala. Always before a teaching, we do the mandala mudra and say a mandala offering, which is a visualization of offering the entire universe in its pure nature, like a universe of jewels and flowers, and we offer that to the teacher and to the Buddhas. And we offer flowers and other offerings. These are all the practice of generosity. So what's the second paramita? Discipline. So discipline, we sweep the room. And we refrain from disrespectful conduct. So we mind our manners, and we take care of the space. We sweep the space. Third paramita, patience, is avoiding harm to living beings, even the smallest of insects, and bearing heat, cold, and all other difficulties. So even if you're uncomfortable and you've been sitting there for 2 hours in a teaching and the chair is starting to hurt your butt, you still stay there and focus and just bear it. The fourth paramita, diligence. We lay aside any wrong views concerning the teacher or the teaching. We listen joyfully with genuine faith. And then for concentration, we listen to the instructions without distraction. And for wisdom, we ask questions to clear up any hesitations or doubts. So this is a way that you can practice the 6 perfections. Anytime you come here, you come for a teaching, you come for an empowerment, you can always practice the 6 paramitas in this way. And the 6 paramitas, just like how there's a specific way that you can practice these in relation to listening to a teaching, there are many ways that the 6 paramitas can appear in the context of any of our ordinary activities in our daily life. So there are a lot of stories about this. There's a lot more to go into, but there are some wonderful teachings on this and the ways that, that these 6 paramitas can appear through our activities. So it's a lot to practice all of these things. We might have very high expectations of ourselves, but what's most important is to remember that we're practicing. This is not an expectation to be perfect right away. We're practicing this, so we have to have patience with ourselves. And just know that what's most important is your motivation. So it's important to have a compassionate motivation no matter what you do. And there's this wonderful story of long ago in Tibet, a man made a little statue of a Buddha, and he placed it by the roadside to bless anyone that passed by. And then one day it was raining, and someone walked by and saw the rain falling on the Buddha's head. And so he said, "Oh no, this is awful, like rain is falling on the Buddha. I have to do something to cover the Buddha." So the only thing he could find was the sole of a shoe that had been discarded on the side of the road. So he made a little umbrella for the Buddha out of the sole of the shoe. And then the next day, after it had stopped raining, someone else came by and said, "Oh no, someone put the sole of a shoe on top of the Buddha. That's so disrespectful. I better take the sole of this shoe off." And he dusted off the Buddha. So all of these 3 people, they all took different actions and some seemingly contradictory actions to each other. Is it appropriate to put the sole of the shoe on top of the Buddha or not? But it doesn't matter because they all came from a compassionate motivation. And so all of their interactions with that Buddha statue, for all 3 of them, those actions were a cause of their enlightenment. You know, those actions helped them on the path, and because it was truly a compassionate motivation. So even if you don't know what to do and you don't know what's appropriate in a situation, just try your best and make sure you're coming from a place of compassion. So that's it for the 6 perfections. In a monastery, the 6 perfections would be studied over the course of months. So it's a lot to cram into 2 classes, and there's a lot more to read on the subject. And so if you're interested in reading any more about the 6 perfections, you can see me after the class. I'd be happy to recommend books to anyone that wants to know more about them. And as we mentioned, some of you weren't here right when we started, but there's going to be a class. So this is part of a class series, and that meets on the first Saturday of every month. Maybe we're meeting next month. We haven't decided yet. But Tukudawa Gyalpo will be here next month, the first weekend of January. And he'll be visiting and teaching. And he'll be giving a kids class, I believe, as part of his visit, as well as the teachings for adults. And then we'll resume this class series, if not in January, then in February. And there's another class series on the 3rd Saturday of every month, and that's the Beginning Buddhist Prayer and Meditation series. And that next class is on December 16th and will be on the meaning and use of stupas. Is that right? Okay. So that will be about stupas. And 11 a.m. Yeah, 11 a.m. on Saturday. So next we're going to do a short prayer practice. This is the Chenrezig practice. Chenrezig is the Buddha of compassion. So this is a practice to awaken our compassionate nature. And then at the end of this practice, we're going to dedicate the merit, which seals in the blessing of all of the compassionate activity that we've been engaged in for the last hour.
And it's on page 93. We're going to read this in English this time, yeah? So the first 4 lines we will do 3 times, reading in English. Namo, I take refuge in the 3 jewels, the 3 roots, all sources of refuge. In order to place all beings in the state of Buddhahood, I give rise to the Supreme Bodhichitta. Namo, I take refuge in the 3 jewels, the 3 roots, and the sources of refuge. In order to practice all beings in the state of Buddhahood, I give rise to the Supreme Bodhichitta. Namo, I take refuge in the 3 jewels, the 3 roots, and all sources of refuge. In order to place all beings in the state of Buddhahood, I give rise to the Supreme Bodhichitta. Continuing. Self-nature is Tuje Chempo Avalokiteshvara, white with 1 face and 4 arms, palms pressed together, holding a mala and a lotus, in full lotus posture, wearing silk and jewel ornaments, seated upon a lotus and moon seat. Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum. Avalokiteshvara, Jigten Wanchuk, is in the realms, is white in color, with 1 face, 4 arms, palms pressed together, holding a vina, seated upon a lotus and moon seat. Consider he remains in full lotus posture. Om Om Soha, Om Om Soha, Om Om Soha, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum. Avalokiteshvara of the jealous god's realm is green in color, with 1 face, 4 arms, palms pressed together, holding armor, seated upon a lotus and moon seat. Consider he remains in the full lotus posture. Om Ma Soha, Om Ma Soha, Om Ma Soha, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum. Avalokiteshvara of the human realm is multicolored, with 1 face, 4 arms, palms pressed together, holding a mala and lotus, seated upon a lotus and moon seat. Consider he remains in the full lotus posture. Om Ni Soha, Om Ni Soha, Om Ni Soha, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum. Avalokiteshvara of the animal realm is smoke-colored, with 1 face, 4 arms, palms pressed together, holding a scripture, seated upon a lotus and moon seat. Consider he remains in the full lotus posture. Om Pat Soha, Om Pat Soha, Om Pat Soha, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum. Avalokiteshvara of the hungry spirit realm is red in color, with 1 face, 4 arms pressed together, holding a vessel seated upon a lotus and moon seat. Consider he remains in full lotus posture. Om Me Soha, Om Me Soha, Om Me Soha, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum. Avalokiteshvara of the hell realms is black, with 1 face, 4 arms, palms pressed together, fire, water, and a lotus. Consider he remains seated in full lotus posture. Om Hung Soha, Om Hung Soha, Om Hung Soha, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum. And we'll accumulate this mantra on our own for just a few moments. Om Mani Padme Hum, 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 Om Mani Padme Om Mani Padme Hum. By this virtue may I swiftly accomplish the state of Avalokiteshvara. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. And may all sentient beings without exception be established in that very status. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. By this effort, may all sentient beings be free of suffering. May their minds be filled with the nectar of virtue. In this way, may all causes resulting in suffering be extinguished, and only the light of compassion shine throughout all realms.
Thank you.